Peripeteia is a first and third-person immersive RPG that has an atmosphere like no other. It's the type of game that, despite some serious early access jank, keeps you playing because of how enrapturing its dystopian world is, as well as exploring its many different paths to completing objectives. Is this title a true diamond in the rough? Let's find out. My name's Johnny Bueno, and let's take a look at Peripeteia. Peripeteia is described by its developers as an alternate history cyberpunk version of Poland. And from what I gather, this alternate history Poland is a special brand of bleak. It's dark, both in terms of the game's tone, as well as, the game is literally dark. Good thing we have night vision, because this felt like a must in some areas of the game. To be fair though, this does fit the setting, as working electricity and lighting aren't exactly abundant when 90% of your buildings are dilapidated wrecks. This is where Peripeteia shines though, as the rundown dystopian cyberpunk setting is painted so incredibly well by the developers, and this is something you'll see in the game's very first level. From the rooftop, you'll see you're surrounded by a sea of concrete and large imposing structures that make you feel very, very small. Fans of brutalist architecture will feel right at home in this game, as you'll often find yourself traipsing through megastructures that feel lifeless and foreboding. This is where I think there are some serious rays of brilliance, as the atmosphere is what makes the world worth getting lost in. And trust me, you will get lost, because there's no map and there are no objective markers in Peripeteia. For full immersion, you'll get directions from NPCs on how to reach your destination, and that's it. The rest is for you to explore and figure out on your own. There is a basic compass at the top of your screen to keep yourself oriented, but that's about all the help you get from the game's UI. And in my opinion, this works in the game's favor as an immersive sim because getting lost is the point. I often found myself unsure if I was actually progressing towards my objective, but I didn't really care, as I was always curious as to what was around the next corner. However, there are some cases where this somewhat works to the game's detriment due to it being in very early access. While some areas may be massive and completely open for exploration, they're still quite empty and clearly waiting to be filled with NPCs or at least something of interest. For example, one of the levels had me go all the way down to street level to mess up some tanks that were causing a ruckus. The street level area the tanks are located in is huge and not inhabited by much other than the tanks themselves. There's a little underground parking garage area, but other than that, I explored the area in full circle several times looking for something of note, but came away mostly empty-handed. So while levels do feel open in terms of how you can explore them, there's still some work that needs to be done to actually make them worth exploring. Now, I've spoken about the game's setting quite a bit, but what about the player character and NPCs? In Peripeteia, you take control of an android named Marie. Marie looks like a depressed owl, but controls like an action hero who can augment herself with various abilities for stealth, movement, and combat. More on augments later. A basic synopsis of Marie's motivations in the story is that she's in search of an underground bunker and is willing to take on any job to bring her closer to that goal. While her actual model is crude, I did like the Vault Boy-esque icons used for her various abilities in the character menu. It added a somewhat cutesy charm to an otherwise deep, dark world. There are plenty of other NPCs that you can interact with throughout Marie's journey, many of whom will fill you in on the politics, events, and rumors happening throughout the game world. Much like Marie, NPC's models are fairly crude to look at, and I'm not really sure if this is on purpose to fit the vibe of the rest of the game or if they simply need more work. Most will sit completely still in one spot, and the vast majority of NPCs you'll come across will either be a soldier wearing a gas mask or a cursed anime girl. Either way, I'd be interested in seeing some more faces in Peripeteia, even if they're as grotesque as the others. Gameplay-wise, you'll be completing missions in a series of open levels to advance the plot and move closer to Marie's goal of reaching the bunker. What I liked is how the open-endedness of each level also plays into how you can complete the game's main and side missions. There's also a mission very early on where you're tasked with stealing a bulb from the local planetarium, only to find a sad, broken-down android when you get to the bottom of the building. After speaking with her, you find that she has a connection to the gentleman that gave us this very task, so you'll need to take her back to him to proceed with the mission. And when I say take her back to him, I mean you need to physically pick her up and carry her all the way back to the area you started in. If you manage to accomplish this weirdly annoying task, you get your train ticket to the next level and a full heart knowing you reunited this man with someone very important to him. Or you can simply report the mission giver to the authorities and get your ticket from them in a matter of minutes. There are likely even more ways to complete this mission that I haven't even explored yet, but hopefully you get the picture. Your playthrough can significantly change based on moral choice and game knowledge. I think this really helps the game feel more replayable, as you may want to explore the game's various routes to completion in subsequent playthroughs. When it comes to accomplishing these missions, you have options for both stealth as well as gunplay if you prefer the loud option like me. Gunplay felt fine, I don't have too many gripes here. I tried out different weapons like shotguns, rifles, and other automatic weapons and didn't really have any issues landing shots or feeling like I was cheated out of getting a kill. Overall, pretty standard stuff here. I did try focusing less on violence and more on stealth in a few areas, which is also fine and not too different from other stealth games. You'll essentially be sticking to the shadows to remain unseen, which is indicated by your visibility level in the bottom left of the HUD. This can actually be pretty difficult to do in some spots, so you'll need to make use of some of Marie's stealth focus augments to progress. In terms of stealth gameplay, I often use this mind control augment that lets you control an NPC to either fire on other enemies or to simply move them out of the way. There are also other augments that let you sprint significantly faster, activate night vision, and even dual wield weapons. These can be slotted in and out as you please, so it's easy to swap around augments best suited for the task. It's a very free, open approach to gameplay, which is something that is consistent in pretty much every element of the game. This obviously includes exploration, as you'll be parkouring your way around levels with some serious verticality. You can grab onto pretty much any ledge you come across, making the world feel incredibly traversable. However, there were a few times where my slick free climbing skills got me into possibly unfinished areas of the game. It may be a little immersion breaking, but I'm glad the map doesn't even try to punish players for their curiosity. Just don't drop from too far of a height when climbing, or you may lose the ability to sprint due to damaged legs. And just one more quirk with the game that I wanted to call out, you can also hack terminals to gain access to locked off areas, and I thought the way you go about hacking is actually kind of funny. Once the hacking process begins, you basically need to guess the password one character at a time, and the best way to go about this, if you don't already know the password, is to press every key on your keyboard as fast as possible within the time limit. You're given a certain number of attempts to do this, and if you fail to guess the password, you get locked out. The reason I find this hilarious is because it will have you looking like a stereotypical hacker you'd see in a corny action movie as you spam the living hell out of your keys. I gotta admit, this was a very fun touch. Okay, so I did want to take some time to go over the early access jank that I mentioned at the start of this video because there's a lot of it in the game's current state. It's to be expected from an early access title, but I've covered many games in early access on my channel, and this might take the cake as one of the buggiest titles I've reviewed. I technically didn't come across anything game-breaking, which is good, but Peripeteia is still quite rough around the edges to say the least. I mentioned the crude NPC models earlier, but one of the most glaring issues to me was the enemy AI. There were times where I was in the middle of a gunfight and the enemies just kind of started running around aimlessly and forgot I existed. Other times they wouldn't even shoot at me unless I was directly in front of them, or they would run around at Mach speeds and clip me in the head before I could even react. It was just so inconsistent and frustrating to deal with, and I hope this is the first in line to be fixed because holy crap did it make me want to break my keyboard in a few spots. My encounter with the tanks I mentioned earlier in this review also ended in disaster. I was tasked with destroying 4 tanks, and after taking out the first 2, the second 2 just kind of half disappeared. I say half because the main body of the remaining 2 tanks were gone, and the top turret parts, I'm not a tank expert, I don't know what it's called, were still visible. They just kind of rotated in midair, and the funny yet sad part was that I ran out of ammo, so my only means of destroying them was to smack them with my sword. And good thing they glitched so hard that they weren't fighting back, because this took me a good 10 minutes of wailing on these suckers to finally take them down. I was even able to finish the mission despite this, but man, I did not feel accomplished, let me tell you. There's also several spots where you'll just get hit with random loud noises seemingly out of nowhere. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this isn't intentional, and hopefully this can be fixed to save future players' eardrums. Despite all of the other issues, I did only manage to get my character stuck once at the bottom of this elevator shaft, so that could have been worse, I guess. My word of advice, save often as there's no autosave in Peripeteia, and you'll be relying entirely on manual saving like the games of old. So clearly the game's bugginess is significant enough to warrant its own section in this video, something I don't normally do. Like I said, I didn't encounter anything game-breaking, but there's still glaring issues that need some attention. The developer does seem quite active though, with bug fix patches dropping almost weekly. I know smaller developers can only work so fast, so it's good to see their dedication. Usually in this last section I like to cover character-specific progression, but Peripeteia doesn't really have any systems where you level up or incrementally increase Marie's power. The closest thing the game has to actual character progression is with collecting augments, which are purchased from shops and found in the game world. Here's the kicker though, and why collecting these augments is so important. Augments are the only items that carry over between levels. Everything else you purchased or spent time collecting through hours of exploration, gone. This was admittedly frustrating and felt kind of disrespectful of players' time. These augments and the items you woefully lose upon level completion are stored in a grid-based inventory, so if you're looking to hold multiple augments and weapons along with enough healing items and ammo, you better master the art of inventory Tetris real fast. Especially if you plan on going the run and gun route, as every single enemy drops their gun on death, which is ripe for the taking. In terms of level progression, Peripeteia currently features 5 playable levels with 9 planned in the full version of the game. The levels technically don't differ too much from one another in terms of the actual environment you're in. It will be the same neutral, muted colors and dreary concrete buildings throughout the entire game. This isn't exactly a point against it though, as the setting doesn't really call for much else, and it does create a decent sense of consistency between levels. You're stuck in a defined dystopian cityscape, not exploring the wonders of the world. What isn't wondrous though is the game's 4th level. Words cannot describe how frustrating this level was for me. Imagine you're spending the first 3 levels playing an immersive, open-ended stealth/sometimes action RPG, and then you get to the 4th level and you're thrust face first into a survival horror brick wall. Because that's the experience in Peripeteia's 4th level, Belgrade. Stripped of all items and augments, you need to work your way to the bottom of a tower filled with mechanical monstrosities. Luckily, you can get a gun early on if you know where to look, but that won't help you with Belgrade's biggest horror, the inability to save your game. Yes, in a level where you're given the bare minimum for equipment, one wrong move could mean a significant amount of lost progress. And you don't even have to be the one to make that wrong move because the game's glitched AI can screw you over too. Remember when I said I got clipped in the head from enemies running around at Mach speeds earlier? That happened here, and this particular death sent me back around 20 to 25 minutes worth of progress, all because of a glitch. And yes, I rage quit the game after that. You can only save your game in very specific locations throughout the level where Marie feels safe, otherwise the save game button just doesn't appear when you open the menu. Needless to say, this level has sparked a lot of discussion on Peripeteia's Steam forum. And I get it, the developer wants players to feel actual danger by forcing them out of save scumming. From my perspective, you can already save whenever you want, wherever you want in every other level, so the lack of consistency here is kind of jarring on your first playthrough. And it just feels awful when you're one glitched enemy away from losing a bunch of progress. As angry as it made me though, I still like the idea of a survival horror level, as it can create a true white-knuckle experience, but I think the execution might be better once the AI is more ironed out. Despite its issues, Peripeteia still shines as a true diamond in the rough amongst indie games. Its open approach to gameplay and immersive, gritty world show the developer's passion for creating something entirely unique in the genre and being unapologetic in their approach. The bugs, AI issues, and wonky character models are things that will ideally be fixed as the game progresses through early access, but in its current state, all I can say is that Peripeteia is fascinating, it's different, and it's 100% worth keeping your eye on. That's all for now though, so if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like or sharing your thoughts on Peripeteia in the comments below. I appreciate every bit of interaction and support, as I love making videos just like this one. So please consider subscribing to support the channel, and as always, thank you for watching.